Hello everyone, my name is Holger and this is the fourth part of a 6-part video series that previews the upcoming Season 2 of the Wheel of Time TV show. If you've not watched the earlier parts yet, then I strongly recommend you do so first. The link to the playlist should be at the top of your screen. In this fourth part I will finish up the deep dives all the way through the end of the season. Spoiler warning. This video does contain spoilers. I recommend that before watching this video you watch the first season of the TV show and read all of the books first, up until book 14, A Memory of Light, plus the prequel New Spring, in order to avoid having your reading enjoyment spoiled. We will continue where we left off at the end of part 3. This means about 2/3 of the way through the season. Let's look at the groups in Falme first. Perrin's group and Aviendha have escaped from Seanchan captivity. Egwene has been with the Seanchan, having been enslaved and trained as a Damane. One of the Sul'dam training Egwene is Renna. Rafe has hinted at that when he stated that his favorite two-person scene of Season 2 involved Egwene and Renna. We can probably expect Egwene to get close to the breaking point during her captivity, but never be fully broken, considering that Nynaeve has previously characterized Egwene as being unbreakable. Egwene will eventually be freed, and there are at least 3 indications that Perrin and the Aiel will cooperate in that effort. First of all, they are the only people in Falme before episode 7 who are even available to plan Egwene's rescue. Everyone else will arrive in Falme after the Kyrian events. Since we have seen a casting discovery for a Kyrian servant to appear in episode 7 or 8, it is unlikely that Rand's group will arrive in Falme before episode 7. If Egwene's rescue effort is only started towards the end of episode 7, then there would probably not be enough time for Egwene to be rescued and for her to then form a close enough relationship with the Aiel to have her decide to go to the Aiel Waste in Season 3, especially considering that the last episode will likely be action-heavy and not leave Egwene much time for reflection. The second indication that the Aiel will be involved in Egwene's rescue comes from casting sites for Aviendha discovered by WoT series, in which Aviendha states that she owes Perrin a debt because Perrin saved her life. This is similar to a situation in Book 4, The Shadow Rising, where Gaul states that he owes Perrin a debt and agrees to protect Fael if that should become necessary. The show will likely use the same theme of clearing a debt by helping a friend of the person the debt is owed to, except the person owing the debt is Aviendha instead of Gaul, and the friend being helped is Egwene instead of Fael. The third indication is related to motivation. The show needs to show why Egwene would decide to go with the Aiel at the beginning of Season 3, instead of continuing her training in the White Tower, which would seem like the obvious decision for her. We have seen in Season 1 that at least Matt seems to have had a somewhat hostile view of the Aiel. The way he talks about stories suggests that this is probably what he believes, but he also wants to hear from Tom to perhaps get a different point of view. A certain amount of hostility is understandable given the history of the Aiel War. If Matt has that viewpoint, then it is likely that others in the Two Rivers feel the same way. In the books, Egwene is also initially hostile towards the Aiel during their first encounter, when she keeps holding Saidar after Elaine and Nynaeve have already released Saidar. In order for Egwene's decision to go with the Aiel to be believable, the show would have to at least demonstrate that Egwene trusts in her safety with the Aiel and in the Aiel's competence to train her. Also, there would have to be some other element that the Aiel can provide that the Tower cannot, and that is likely going to be dreamwalking. So Egwene would have to understand that dreamwalking exists, that it is important, that she has a special talent for it, and that the Aiel can teach her. In addition, the Aiel would need a reason to allow Egwene to come with them, since they do not usually allow most wetlanders to enter the Aiel Waste. That reason would likely be the recognition that Egwene has a talent for dreamwalking and should be trained. All of that could be established if the Aiel are the group that rescue Egwene. This would certainly establish trust in Egwene's safety. The other parts, especially dreamwalking, could be included in the rescue. Here's how I imagine the rescue could happen. Perrin asks Aviendha for help in rescuing Egwene. Then Aviendha asks the other Aiel for help. They would need logistical information, for example where and how Egwene is being held. Since Perrin does not have that information, this is where dreamwalking could come in. A wise one who came with the Aiel might try to enter Egwene's dreams to contact her that way. One possible complication is that the Aiel do not know Egwene yet, and we don't know whether wise ones can enter a person's dream who they have not met before. To work around that, Perrin would either have to find an opportunity to point out Egwene to the Aiel, or perhaps he could act as an intermediary through his wolf dream ability. Either way, I expect a wise one to eventually make contact with Egwene in her dreams, get enough information for a rescue, and then free her. That conversation in Egwene's dreams would at the time seem like a regular dream to Egwene, so she would be surprised to suddenly see the woman from her dream in real life later. This dream encounter could easily establish the importance of dreamwalking to Egwene, the skill the Wise Ones have, and Egwene's own talent. I expect Maigan to be freed at the same time. This is because, from an out-of-story perspective, someone needs to take the Horn of Valere back to the White Tower. Unlike what happens in the books, I don't expect anyone from our group to make that trip in the show. Maigan would be a good candidate for that. As a Blue, she would not be able to actually return to the tower once she finds out that Elida has disbanded the Blue Archer, so she would have to head for Saladar instead. In the books, Maigan later becomes a Blue Sitter among the Rebel Aes Sedai, which would fit perfectly with this storyline, and maybe why Maigan was chosen by the writers as the person to travel to the West Coast. After Egwene has been freed, I expect to see some conversations between Egwene and the Aiel, especially one of the Wise Ones. Formal training probably won't start until everyone is in the Aiel Waste, but Egwene's curiosity will likely lead to at least some questions. One of the remaining questions about Egwene's storyline in Season 2 is whether Teleron WoT will be introduced in Season 2 as part of Egwene's storyline in Falme, or whether the writers have decided to delay this until Season 3 in the Aiel Waste. I'll get back to that a little later, once Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve have all reunited. Then there's the issue of Fael. John from WoT recently reported a rumor that, contrary to prior assumptions, Fael does actually appear in Season 2. We have no confirmation of that yet, but if the rumor is true, and if Fael meets Perrin in Season 2, then I expect this to happen after Egwene has been freed. Let's go back to the Eastern Randlands now, where we have two separate storylines. The events in the White Tower, and the group consisting of Rand, Moraine, and Lan going to Verin's place. Moraine likely split off from the group and headed to Verin by herself, and we now need to look at what happens at Verin's place. I expect Moraine to get two pieces of information from Verin. One is that there has been a Black Archer raid on the White Tower, and that Egwene has been abducted in the process. Verin has likely known about this for a while, being a member of the Black Archer, but has probably been under orders not to reveal this, since revealing it too early would have been a betrayal of her Black Archer oaths. However, after the events have happened and it has become common knowledge, it would no longer be a betrayal, and Verin should be able to talk about it. The interesting question is if the show takes this opportunity to provide a slight hint at Verin possibly being black, for example by having Verin lie about her source, or by having Verin reveal some detail which is not common knowledge yet. In the books, something like that does happen when Verin claims that Moraine sent her to follow Rand's group, which later turns out not to be true, and in the books this is one of the early hints that Verin might be black. Moraine will likely ask Verin for help in getting her powers back, with Verin being unable to help, but this would be a chance for Verin to go off on a tangent and talk about a group that might be able to help Moraine, and that is the Finn, except that nobody knows where the Redstone doorframe is that leads to their world. I expect that in the show the Redstone doorframe is located in the Sun Palace in Cairhien, and that Moraine, who grew up in the Sun Palace, would remember seeing the doorframe in her childhood, except she never knew what it was used for. Now with the information from Verin, Moraine realizes that the doorframe may indeed be the key to finding out how to get her powers back. I imagine that viewers may not actually see at this time what exactly Verin tells Moraine, only that Moraine receives some information from Verin that lets her believe that she has a chance to get her powers back, and that in order to do that she has to travel to Cairhien. That way the inclusion of the doorframe in Season 2 could be kept secret for most book readers until our group actually gets to Cairhien. In the books the doorframe acts as a plot device, primarily for Matt. In the show I expect it to also have that function, but beyond that to also act as a plot device in even more ways. The first is that it will be the reason why any of our characters even go to Cairhien. In the books this happens somewhat coincidentally as part of the hunt for the Horn, but the show needs to use a different reason. I will look into all of the different ways in which I expect the doorframe to be used in the show once our characters get to Cairhien. Moraine's immediate goal is to reunite with Lan and Rand, and we will probably see fighting on that return trip, including a Fade attacking Moraine, and multiple Fades attacking Lan and Rand, as previously mentioned. It is possible that these attacks are a result of Moraine visiting Verin. This means that Verin was under orders by the Black Archer to report any contact with any members of our group, and that has led to Fades being sent to intercept our group. Once Moraine is back together with Lan and Rand, they will head to Valon first to check up on the status of the search for Egwene. Meanwhile, in the White Tower, two separate investigations into the Black Archer raid have been ongoing, one headed by Nynaeve, possibly with the help of Alanna, with the goal to find where Egwene has been taken. The other one by the Red Archer, headed by Elida, which uses the investigation into the Black Archer raid as an excuse to attack Swan. We might also see Alviarin get introduced by the show in the context of this investigation. By the time Moraine arrives in Tar Valon, tower politics between the red and blue Archers likely have escalated significantly. Once Moraine's group gets to Tar Valon, I expect her to send a message to Alanna in the tower, who can then get Nynaeve, Elaine, and Matt together to discuss the situation. They likely have the discouraging news that there's still no trace at all of Egwene or Liandrin. Moraine then realizes that the redstone doorframe could not just be used for Moraine to find out how to get her powers back, but also for the group to find out where Egwene is. At this point, I expect Moraine to persuade everyone, including Alanna and her warders, to group up and head to Cairhien together. That way, as soon as they find out where Egwene is, everyone can go directly to that place and attempt to free her. Let's talk about Alanna for a moment. Initially, in Season 1, Moraine did not trust Alanna with her secrets, and Alanna reminded Moraine that someday Moraine has to trust someone with her secrets. In a Comic-Con Q&A, in response to a question about Jenny the dog in Episode 4, Rafe suggested that the issue of trust between Moraine and Alanna will play a bigger role in Season 2. I think this actually already started in Season 1, in an off-screen meeting between Moraine and Alanna, between the events of Season 1, Episodes 5 and 6, and that in that meeting Moraine told Alanna at least some of her secrets. We will probably find out about that meeting via a flashback. There are hints at such a meeting hidden in Season 1, Episode 6, and I will explain this more in Part 6 of this video series. Now, in the timeline of Season 2, Moraine will likely trust Alanna even further. One piece of information I expect Moraine to give Alanna now is the identity of Rand as the Dragon Reborn. There are several reasons why Alanna would join the group, most of them out of story. First of all, the TV show is very popular in India, largely because of Priyanka Bose, the actress playing Alanna, so it would make sense for Amazon to give her plenty of screen time. Then there's an interview with Emmanuel Imani, the actor playing Ivan, one of Alanna's warders. Emmanuel stated in the interview that in Season 2 he was given some really cool stuff, and I guess that has to mean more than sparring with warders and occasionally handing Alanna some snacks. Finally, if Season 3 follows the books, then Alanna needs to be in the Two Rivers in Season 3, and the easiest and fastest way for her to get there is by joining our group. This means to first portal stone to Falme, and from there, in Season 3, go to the Two Rivers through the Ways, together with Perrin. In story, the reason for her to join will probably be that she wants to help Moraine as the only fully trained channeler in the group, since Moraine has lost her powers. Our group will leave Tar Valon and head to Cairhien. Since the group now has a significant amount of firepower, with 4 channelers, including Rand, and 3 warders, I don't think we will see any fighting on the trip. One possible event along the way might be Rand finding the male half of the Chosen Khal north of Cairhien. It would make sense for the show to introduce it at this time, if they want Rand to be aware of its backstory when he later finds the access keys in Ruidian. However, this also could be delayed to Season 4, when Rand comes to Cairhien again, after coming out of the Aiel Waste. Let's look at the political situation in Cairhien for a moment. There have been suggestions that perhaps the show would simplify it by having the Damodred house remain the royal house after King Laemon's death. This means to have Barthanes as king, and completely skip the storylines related to Galldrian. I don't think this is likely because Moraine earlier stated that she was a member of a fallen house, which only works if House Damodred is no longer the royal house. This means in the show we will probably have House Damodred and House Riotin as separate houses, and Galldrian as king, just like in the books. However, this means that both Barthanes and Galldrian need to die before Season 4, probably in Season 2, to set up the required civil war in Cairhien. Looking at the events in Cairhien, I expect 3 separate storylines to play out. At the beginning, Moraine will likely have everyone stay at an inn and then send a message to her cousin Barthanes, who we know has been cast, for help on how to be introduced to the Cairhenian nobility, and to eventually get access to the Sun Palace. What she does not know is that Barthanes is a Dark Friend. Based on the likely fate attacks earlier, it seems like that there is some sort of a standing order among the Shadow to capture or kill some members of our group. Because of that, Moraine and others who accompany her to Barthanes will probably walk into a trap at Barthanes Manor and will have to fight their way out. At that opportunity, Barthanes could die, which from an out-of-story perspective is really the only important part about Moraine's visit with Barthanes. The second storyline involves the Foregate. We have seen Rand in the Foregate, and this could be linked to a vision by Min in Season 1, where she mentioned carnivals, possibly referring to the carnivals in the Cairhien Foregate. More importantly, though, there is the possibility that Matt may get fireworks from Eludra at this time. We have seen 2 pictures of explosions in the Foregate, which could be related to Illuminators. The question, of course, is whether the show will even have any scene in which Matt uses explosives, and if so, where. The obvious solution would be for him to use explosives in a later season when Rand takes the Stone of Tyr. The problem with that is that by that time, Rand will already be very powerful, able to travel, to use Sidin, and will have Ashaman and Aiel at his side. So it would probably not be believable for Mat to make any real difference by throwing firecrackers through a window. I think the more likely option is that Mat uses fireworks in Season 2, but in a different location than Tyr. I'll talk about the possible options for that when we get to those locations. For that, Mat would have to get his fireworks at this time. For that, I think the show may combine the initial Illuminator scene from Book 2 and the later scene in Book 3, where Mat saves Eludra's life, into a single scene in the Foregate, and that Mat will get his fireworks at that opportunity. The third major storyline in Caerleon will be access to the Sun Palace, which then also leads to access to the Redstone door frame. The hint that the Sun Palace will be included in Season 2 comes from the casting of a Sun Palace servant. After Moiraine's initial plan of using Balthanus for this has failed, she now needs to look for an alternative way to get into the palace. There are several options, but to me the most likely and most interesting option is to use Elaine for that. Elaine is the daughter heir of Andor, so our group could simply rent some carriages, dress Elaine up appropriately, and have everyone else disguised as servants. The whole group could then arrive at the Sun Palace appearing to be an official Andoran delegation, consisting of Elaine and her entourage, pretending that the visit has been pre-arranged. I don't expect Elaine to be happy about such an idea, considering how her mom is likely to react once she finds out, but perhaps Rand can persuade Elaine. Galldrian would be surprised by the visit, of course, since he has not actually received any notice, but he would likely pretend that he expected Elaine and receive her. Anything else would just lead to a diplomatic incident and make him look weak under Dice Demar rules. Elaine would need a lady's maid to accompany her to her audience with Galldrian, probably Nynaeve. This would be an early reference to a similar scene in the books where Nynaeve also pretends to be Elaine's maid during their trip from Tanchico to Salidar and is not happy about that. The show would have a chance here to set up some of the dynamic between Elaine and Nynaeve a bit earlier. The others would all be dressed up as servants and go to the servants' quarters. Overall, the storyline would play out in a somewhat similar way to the reception at Balthanus Manor in Book 2. Some would then try to make their way from the servants' quarters to the location where the Redstone door frame is located. That group would have to consist of at least Moiraine, Mat, probably Rand, and possibly also Alanna, since her channeling ability would be useful to get past any locked doors or other obstacles. This could also be the first opportunity for Mat to use fireworks, but I think this is unlikely. There will be better opportunities later. We then get to the Redstone door frame scene, which I will discuss in a minute. Eventually, everyone just leaves the palace, although there's the possibility that the Redstone door frame group is caught, and that our group has to fight their way out. The interesting question here is when and how Galldrian is killed, which needs to happen in order for the civil war in Caerleon to start. In the books, this is arranged by Tom, in revenge for Galldrian's attack on him and his girlfriend Dina. That would not work in the show, since Tom is not in Season 2. I can see two options how the show could arrange for Galldrian to be killed. One is for him to be killed off-screen after our group leaves. One way this could happen is that members of House Damodred find Balthanus dead, with dead Trollocs near him, and think that his rival Galldrian is responsible for this, and is himself a Dark Friend. House Damodred could then arrange for Galldrian to be killed in revenge for Balthanus' death. The other more interesting option is that Galldrian dies while our group is still in the Sun Palace, for example during fighting that occurs when the Redstone Doorframe group is caught. This would be interesting because Elaine's presence would then tie House Trakand to the death of King Galldrian, with massive diplomatic and political repercussions. Morghese would likely be furious, not just with her daughter, but also with Swan. From her point of view, the last thing she did was give her daughter into the care of Swan for Elaine to be trained as an Aes Sedai, and the next thing she hears is that a group that includes Aes Sedai used her daughter to get access to the Sun Palace and assassinate King Galldrian. This is certainly not what Morghese had in mind for her daughter's near future, and she would expect Swan to be behind this and blame her for all of that. This would set up a conflict between Andor and Tar Valon, which could then influence Gawain and explain why he later switched sides to Elida so easily during her coup. It could also lead to Morghese eventually being killed herself, arranged by House Riotin in revenge of Galldrian's death, because the other members of House Riotin would probably assume that Morghese was behind Galldrian's death in some form and would exact revenge under Dice Demar. Having Morghese be killed sometime during Season 3 or early Season 4 would be useful for the show, because it would create a power vacuum in Andor that Rand could then step into during Season 4, after coming out of the Idle Waste. In the books, Morghese simply leaves Andor, which leads to the long storyline in which she eventually is abducted by the Shaido. I expect that storyline to have been completely cut in the show, and will explain why in Part 5 of this video series. Without that storyline, Morghese would have to die, and having House Riotin do this would make it unnecessary for the writers to introduce another plot device for this, for example an attack by one of the Forsaken. Having the rulers of both Andor and Cairhien get killed would put Andor, Cairhien, and possibly Valon all at the brink of war, and would create an interesting challenge for Rand once he comes out of the Aiel Waste. So then let's look at the Redstone door frame and how we can expect it to be used in the show. In the books, the Redstone door frame is basically just an elaborate plot device, primarily for Mat. Moiraine and Rand also step through, but for Moiraine we never really find out what information she gets, and for Rand the information he receives is so generic that Robert Jordan could easily have integrated it into a prophecy instead of using the doorframe to communicate it to Rand. So in the books the doorframe is really not strictly necessary for Rand's storyline. It looks like the main reason why RJ chose to have Moiraine and Rand step through the doorframe as well is to make the doorframe look a bit more generic and to make it look less like a just Mat-specific plot device. The bottom line is that the only person the doorframe is truly important for in the books is Mat. The doorframe accomplishes two things for Mat. One is to level him up with additional knowledge, abilities, and items, including his Ashandarai and his medallion. The other purpose of the doorframe for Mat is to give Mat a reason to go to the Aiel Waste, and also for the Aiel to have a reason to accept Mat in the land. And the reason why RJ wanted that is because it gives Mat an easy way to be near Cairhien at the right time, so his military storyline can get started there, through his interactions with Cairhien soldiers and the death of Couladin. In the books, everyone except for Mat already has a reason to go to the Aiel Waste. Rand goes because the Aiel are the people of the dragon, and the Aiel accept him because Rand is he who comes with the dawn. Egwene goes because she wants Dreamwalker training, and the Aiel take her because she has the rare Dreamwalker talent. Moiraine goes because she wants to be with Rand, and the Aiel take her because their prophecies tell them that they may not fail in Aes Sedai again. Lan goes because he wants to be with Moiraine, and the Aiel take him because he's Analine. Mat has no inherent reason, nor do the Aiel have a reason to accept him. The doorframe gives Mat such a reason because of the Finn's claim that if Mat does not go to Rhuidean he will die, and the Aiel accept that as equivalent to prophecy. This is also why the function of the doorframe has been split into two pieces, Tyr and Rhuidean. After the Tyr doorframe sent Mat to Rhuidean, there had to be something else in Rhuidean that happens to Mat in order to complete that plot arc, so RJ decided to just have two doorframes, which together cause Mat to level up, with each doorframe providing part of what is necessary for that. In the show I expect that we will see the doorframe, not only because it is so iconic, but also because it is a very useful plot device, especially for Season 2, because for Season 2 the writers had to pretty much build a new storyline around the individual events from books 2 and 3, and in that kind of situation it can be very helpful to have a plot device that gives characters a reason to do what is needed for the storyline to work. We don't need two doorframes though, only one, and it can level up Mat all the way in a single trip. That's because in the show I don't expect Mat to go to the Aiel Waste in Season 3. He will have a different story arc that is easier to motivate, so we don't need any plot device for Mat to send him to Rhuidean. In the books both doorframes lead to different places, to either snakes or foxes, but that part of the mythology is easy to change for the show. All the show needs to do is have a single doorframe that leads to both groups, snakes and foxes, so the person going through the doorframe could then either ask questions or make requests, or both. Based on that, here's how I expect the storyline around the Redstone doorframe to play out in Season 2. The first function of the doorframe is to act as a plot device to lead everyone to Cairhien, which is necessary for other reasons as explained earlier, and this has already happened. Once the group arrives, Moiraine probably tries to give an explanation on what everyone is supposed to do, but Mat then is too impatient and just jumps through the doorframe before Moiraine has finished her explanation, most likely because he wants the opportunity to make up for leaving the group at the end of Season 1. Inside he makes a mess of things similar to the books and ends up with basically the same pieces of information as in the books, except for Rhuidean, and instead of that he may get the information where Egwene is. This means Falme. So the doorframe acts as a plot device to point most of the group to Falme after the Cairhien events. I also expect Mat to get his military memories, his Ashandarai and his medallion. Whether he is hanged afterwards remains to be seen. Perhaps the show finds a less drastic way for Mat to pay a price. This is then also our first indication whether any of the Mat-related storylines have been cut. If the part about the Daughter of the Nine Moons is missing, then the Tuon storyline may be cut. If the part about half of the light of the world is missing, then rescuing Moiraine may have been cut. Moiraine also needs to step through, and she finds out that Siuan can remove her shield, pointing Moiraine back to the White Tower after the Cairhien events. More about the connection between Siuan and Moraine's shield a little later. Moraine might also find out where the Black Archer has gone, and that would be Tanchico, which would provide a pointer to where Elaine and Nynaeve need to go in Season 3. Rand likely also steps through, possibly to get the same information as in the books. This means the north and the east must be one, the west and the south must be one, the two must be one, to live you must die. There are other pieces of information he might also get though, for example about the people of the dragon or about portal stones, specifically how to use portal stones to get to Falme. After the Redstone doorframe storyline completes and everyone gets out of the Sun Palace, the group splits up. Moraine and Lan need to head back to Valon so Moraine can get her shield removed. She probably asks Alanna to stay with the others and protect them, and that group then heads to Falme via Portal Storm. Let's look at Moraine and Lan first though. They go back to Valon and then enter the White Tower, likely either by sneaking in or disguised as petitioners. If you're wondering how Moraine is able to enter the tower after her Oath of Exile, that oath actually contains a massive loophole that likely caused the oath to drop off from Moraine right after Moraine spoke it. The loophole is related to the wording of the oath and the use of the word home and its meaning. This is one of the secrets hidden in Season 1, and I'll discuss it in more detail in part 6 of this video series. The sisters in the tower do not know about that, of course, and assume that the oath is still in effect, so Moraine would have to make sure that she's not seen and recognized after entering the tower. Moraine arranges to see Swan, makes sure that the two of them are in private, and Swan removes Moraine's shield. The concept of Swan removing Moraine's shield is based on the idea that young Swan unraveling a knot in her father's fishing net could be foreshadowing for Swan also having a talent to unravel knots in weaves that have been tied off. The idea has been stated by Rebecca on her YouTube channel Reading the Pattern, and also by Jenny, aka Lesby Nerdy. The problem is that removing the shield backfires, because Moraine is not just shielded, but also has a stilling weave applied to her, as I explained earlier. The effects of that weave have been delayed because of her shield, but with the shield now removed, the stilling goes fully into effect, and we probably see the same visual effect for Moraine that we saw for Logain in episode 4, except that it will be all white, without black strands, because Moraine does not have any corruption. This likely also causes the water bond to break. Lan likely goes into a rage when this happens, and this could lead to Swan and Moraine being discovered, if Lan is with them at the time, because other Aes Sedai likely wonder what the noise is about and come to investigate. At some point, Elida will find out about this, and take this as yet another angle from which to attack Swan. Just seeing Moraine in the tower would raise questions about Moraine's Oath of Exile, and whether Swan has rescinded it without telling the Hall, or somehow administered the oath improperly. Swan would be questioned about this, and being under the first oath would have to either refuse to answer or incriminate herself. We know from the way Swan prompted the oath to Moraine that Swan was complicit in creating this backdoor in Moraine's oath. This means Moraine and Swan planned the backdoor together. I will explain this in part 6 of this video series. There are several other ways in which Swan can be accused of improper or even illegal behavior. One is of course her long-running conspiracy with Moraine and the fact that she kept the rebirth of the dragon secret from the Hall. Also, Swan has known since Season 1 that Liandrin is a member of the Black Archer and likely did not inform the Hall. This is another secret in Season 1 that I will cover in part 6 of this video series. All in all, Elida should have plenty of angles from which she can attack Swan once she finds out about all of this. The end result of all of these events is that Moraine and likely Lan are imprisoned in the White Tower at the end of Season 2, with Moraine also having been stilled. Swan is likely also imprisoned and under suspicion of having committed crimes, which will prepare us for Elida's coup in Season 3. Let's switch back to Rand's group, which has just portal stone to Falme, or an area close to it. There's a chance that we get Flicker here, but I think it is more likely that if we do get that scene at all, we will get it in Season 3, on the trip from Falme to the Isle Waste. That would give the show more time to deal with the fallout from that scene and how it affects each character, rather than showing it at the end of Season 2, where it would be squeezed in between the Kyrian events and the Falme events. Before we look at what happens to Rand's group, we first need to talk about the power situation in Falme. I already mentioned in one of the earlier videos that there are indications that, at least at some point in the season, the White Cloaks might be on the side of the Seanchan. One such indication is that Aviendha is fighting a White Cloak in what appears to be the same fight in which members of Perrin's group fight the Seanchan. The other indication is a scene in which we see White Cloaks riding towards a fortress. They have their shields on their backs and do not have their swords drawn, so this does not look like an attack. Rather, they seem to just be entering the fortress, so they appear to be friendly with the group holding the fortress. We don't know for sure who that group is, but the dark armor and the fact that they are wearing helmets suggests that these may be the Seanchan. Also, we have seen Seanchan occupy fortresses in Falme in other pictures. All of that suggests that the White Cloaks are on the side of the Seanchan, at least at some point during the season. However, there's also evidence pointing in the opposite direction. For example, this photo of a situation map showing troops in and around Falme. The dark pieces appear to be the Seanchan, who have ships around Falme and have already occupied the city. The question is what the light pieces represent. The fact that we seem to have a person in the picture wearing a white cloak suggests that at least some of those pieces represent the White Cloaks, probably the cavalry pieces on the right. However, there are also siege engines deployed around Falme, and from what we know about the White Cloaks, there is no reason to believe that the White Cloaks even have siege engines. My guess is that the siege engines belong to parts of the Falme military that are stationed outside of Falme and are now trying to enter the city and expel the Seanchan. This would suggest that at least at this time, the White Cloaks are on the opposite side of the Seanchan and have joined forces with the Falme military. So overall, this is rather confusing. Perhaps what happens is that the White Cloaks initially side with the Seanchan and then later change sides after they realize that the Seanchan used channelers, because that would make the Seanchan dark friends from the White Cloaks' point of view. The other interesting piece of information we can get from the situation map is that Falme has apparently been locked down by the Seanchan with the city gates closed, because there would be no need for siege engines if the city gates were open. If the Seanchan locked down the city shortly after they occupied the city, which seems likely, this means that the city probably has been locked down during most of Season 2, probably since before any of our characters arrived in Falme. So if that is the case, how does everyone get into the city? The answer depends on where the waygate is. If it is inside of the city, then getting into the city would have been easy, but so far we have not seen any waygates inside of cities in the show, and the two waygates we have seen so far for Season 2 also do not appear to be inside of a city. So I'm assuming that the waygate for Falme will be outside of the city, probably on Toman Head, similar to the books. Liandrin and Egwene would arrive at the waygate, go to the city gate, and at that point Liandrin may simply surrender Egwene to the Seanchan city guards. This implies that Liandrin and probably other members of the Shadow knew ahead of time that the Seanchan had occupied Falme. That seems likely anyway, because otherwise Liandrin would have had no reason to abduct Egwene. For Padan Fain, it is likely similar. His group may just walk up to the city gate and then ask to be admitted to High Lord Turak, and that meeting may have been prearranged in some form. Then there's Perrin's group. They may also just walk up to the city gate, but would not know that the city has been taken over by the Seanchan. They would likely just identify themselves and ask for help in pursuing thieves into the city. At that time the Seanchan would likely detain them, because the Seanchan would not want any foreign military group running loose in their city. This is probably how Perrin ends up in the Seanchan lineup we discussed earlier. All of these events would likely happen before the army outside of Falme gets in position. For Rand's group, the situation is a bit different, because he arrives by Portal Stone, not Waygate, and a bit later, likely after the army outside of the city is in position. I can see two possibilities here. The probably less likely possibility is that the Portal Stone is in the city. In that case, after Perrin's group freed Egwene, they may hide in the city, then Rand Portal Stones into the city, searches for Egwene and finds their group, and the remaining plot continues from there. I think this is less likely, mostly because of the difficulty of Rand's group finding Egwene in a city occupied by the Seanchan, especially if Egwene is hiding from the Seanchan at that time. The more likely possibility is that the Portal Stone is outside of the city, which would lead to a storyline somewhat like this. After Perrin's group frees Egwene and possibly Maigan, they flee from the city, probably at night, by killing Seanchan city guards and then just sneaking out through the gates. That would be safer and would make more sense for Perrin. His goal at that point may just be to get back to the Waygate to return to Fadara or Tarvalon and organize reinforcements. However, once outside of the city, they would run into the army stationed outside of the city and would probably be held up. This could lead to a number of interesting events later on. First of all, if White Cloaks are with that army, they may recognize Perrin and Egwene, probably because of descriptions or drawings sent out by Eamon Valder after the events of Season 1, Episode 5. So this may be the beginning of a conflict between Perrin and the White Cloaks, which then continues into Season 3 in the Two Rivers. Also, this may explain how Rand's group finds Perrin and Egwene later. I imagine that after portal stoning to a location outside of Falme, Rand's group continues on to Falme, runs into the army outside of the city, and then finds Perrin and Egwene there. The show needs to time his arrival, so it happens in the early morning hours. That way the Aiel in the camp could see Rand as he who comes with the dawn. Let's look at the tactical situation for a moment. After the Seanchan lock down the city, they would have to ensure that an outside force cannot easily retake it. An obvious solution for that is to place Damani on the city walls, who can attack any approaching army from a distance. We have seen potential hints of that happening in the behind the scenes video. I believe the structure shown in this picture may become a watchtower that is part of the Falme city walls. We see background panels and green screen panels on set, so the actual city walls could easily be added in post-production. The women standing on top of that structure are probably just stand-ins used by the crew while they determine how to set up the scene. During actual shooting, they will be replaced by actors in costumes, playing Sodam and Damani. In that situation, any outside army that does not have channelers would have a hard time getting close to the city, which would explain why the army has not attacked yet and has only moved somewhat into position. After Perrin, Egwene and the Aiel escape from the city and join the army, the odds somewhat improve, but not enough. They would have Egwene as one channeler and possibly Megan as another channeler, limited by the third oath though. However, the Seanchan have the high ground, their Sodam and Damani have cover, and the Seanchan probably have more channelers, so the odds are still very much against a successful attack. Once Rand and his group also join, the odds look better. Rand brings 4 additional channelers, including himself, Nynaeve, Elaine and Alanna, all quite powerful, and Alanna, as a member of the Green Archer, has combat training and experience. Also, Matt may have brought fireworks, which could also be useful, either to break through the gates or to create a diversion, and this is the second opportunity the show has for Matt to use his fireworks. After Rand arrives, the show will probably slow down for a little while. The in-story reason would be for everyone to exchange news and to make battle plans to attack the city. The out-of-story reasons are that Rand and the Aiel need to get to know each other, and this would also be an opportunity for Aviendha to observe Rand being together with Elaine. The big question is whether at this time Elaine, Nynaeve and Egwene also get a chance to set up meetings in Teleron so they can communicate in Season 3. I'm not sure if this will happen. It would be useful and some form of communication would be important, especially in Season 4, because the Salidar group will then need a way to contact Egwene to summon Egwene to Salidar. The problem is that this would also require Elaine, Nynaeve or Egwene to obtain a Dream Ring ter'angreal, and this might be difficult. In the show I do not expect Egwene to get that ring before leaving the tower, because the Seanchan would just take it away from her. The most likely way to introduce the ring in the show is via Elaine and Nynaeve, who could take one off a captured Black Archer sister during the hunt for the Black Archer. It is not clear when that would happen. For any Black Archer sisters captured in the White Tower itself, the girls would probably not get to keep the ring. Theoretically, they could capture a Black Archer sister later in Cairhien, but it is not clear how and why they would find someone there, so this would probably not fit well into the storyline. The other problem is that this would also require Teleron to be introduced in Season 2, probably late in the season after Egwene has been freed, which would likely feel too rushed. Introducing Teleron would probably work better in Season 3, in the Isle Waste, when the show has more time for this, and Teleron can become the center point of Egwene's training by the Wise Ones. Similarly, it would make more sense for Nynaeve and Elaine to capture Black Archer's sisters only once they reach Tanchico in Season 3. That way Teleron and interrogating Black Archer's sisters could both be introduced as new themes in Season 3. Because of that, I think it is most likely that we will not get a full introduction to Teleron or the Dream Ring ter'angreal in Season 2. Communication between Egwene and the other girls may be more ad hoc during Season 3. For example, Egwene could occasionally enter the girls' dreams, the way she did in the books during their Ibudar trip. The Dream Ring ter'angreal could still come into play later in Season 3, once Nynaeve and Elaine have taken it off a captured Black Archer sister. What remains is a description of the events in Falme. We have little information about this, but have to expect that they will be close to what is described in the books. After our group has gained access to the city, some of them will head to the palace to retrieve the Horn of Valir. This group will likely include Rand and Matt and possibly Perrin. This is when I expect the fight against Turak to happen. The horn will be retrieved and someone will blow it, probably Matt, but possibly also Perrin, leading to the Heroes of the Horn battle. Also, Ishamael will show up and Rand will kill him. The show will probably spend a few minutes wrapping up events after that, and that will be the end of Season 2. There are still several unresolved plot threads, and there are a few hints from the videos Amazon has published that I have not covered yet. Also, in the first 2 parts of this video series we collected a list of plot elements, and not all of them have been incorporated into the storyline yet. I will examine all of those remaining items in the next video, and in that video I will also look at how the events of Season 2 may get distributed across episodes, along with episode themes, cold opens, and potential animated origin shorts. This is the end of this video. Thanks everyone for watching, I hope you've had fun, and please join me again for the next video in this series. Also please like, subscribe and leave comments. The description of this video has links for all source material used in the creation of the video. Thanks again, and that's it for now.